A very good evening to all the viewers and welcome to today's edition of the Evening Review. My name is Toivan Jabela, your host. Tonight we continue the conversation around the removal of the statue of Curt von Francois from in front of the City of Windhoek headquarters. It has received a lot of reactions, mixed reactions. Some people are happy with the development, some are unhappy. And to continue this conversation with me tonight on the show is Andreas Vaatz. He is a lawyer and a member of the German-speaking community in Namibia. He has been one of those voices that are opposed to the removal. Uncle, thank you very much for making time.
Thank you very much for inviting me, giving me a chance to say something.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I saw your remarks in the Namibian Sun today, where you seem to be opposed to the removal of this statue. If you can indulge me on why you think this was a wrong decision.
The way I see it is a city like Windhoek must have a character. And how does a city get character? You get it through the buildings and through the monuments and through the parks and trees. No? Mm-hmm. And so why, if you have monuments, and we had a few beautiful ones, two have now been removed, why remove them? What's the advantage of it? I say, you know, if you take political decisions, one question you must ask yourself is, what is it for? What benefit is there? You know, not just emotional stuff. Oh, these were bad people, so we have to throw them into waste paper basket. No, what emotional, what clear benefits are you getting for the community? And I think these two, I mean, I'm talking about the rider and now this von Francois, it was a beautiful statue, you know, from an art point of view. I again looked yesterday, I said, it is very well done. No? And why remove it? What advantage do you gain? Just a bit of an emotional kick for Mr. Napando or so. And that's about it. No? Next week nobody will remember him anymore. While if we had kept it here, it would be an interesting thing for the tourists. No? As one lady said in the newspaper also, they make photos and so on. And that's why they come to the town, walk around in the town. What else do you do in a town? If you're a foreigner, you don't necessarily want to buy things. You want to get the atmosphere of the country, and that you can get through the statues, through the parks, and through the buildings. No? Church building and some traditional German buildings make out the atmosphere of a town. At the moment, I think Swakopmund is a town with the greatest city atmosphere in Namibia. You know, every time I go to Swakopmund, I enjoy the buildings and the statues and the atmosphere. Of course, the fact that it's on the sea and that there's a jetty and so on adds to it, to the atmosphere. But I loved Swakopmund since 1940.
So one of the reasons advanced by those who were for the removal of the statue is that it depicted some sort of celebration of German victories against the native communities, and therefore they did not feel it was correct to have a celebratory monument in that way. What do you say to that?
I say to that, every country has grown up. No? It had a colonial period. Even Germany had a colonial period. It was the Romans who were then the masters. No? And in Africa, every country in Africa was, virtually everyone was a colony, and you grow up and you have nice things. There are many well-built things which the Germans did in Namibia. There are a few things which were not good, and in hindsight, we say how it's possible that German people or any people could have behaved like that. But that happens everywhere, and that is not enough to destroy the history, because you're not doing away with history. You can't say hocus pocus filibus, you know, a witchcraft thing, and then suddenly there was no such history. The history will stay on the books.
Absolutely.
And the pictures that were painted at the time of the history, they are the ones that give us an indication of what the kind of a colonial period of history we had.
Yeah.
And in this case, as I say, the statue was so well made, you know, it gave you a very good impression of how German soldiers or generals or whatever looked like in those times. And the interesting thing is, if I may say that, if you go on August to Okahandja when the Hereros have their celebrations, and you look at what hats and uniforms they wear, it's very close to this German uniform. It's not that they said, oh no, we're not going to wear what the German soldiers who killed our people wore. No, they liked it. The hat is smart, so they liked it. And that's the long and short of it. It's you must, also in a family, you know, there's also quarrels and times when you love each other and like each other. And the same with the country. And that is what we call history. And every a birth is not an easy thing. And you cannot eliminate it by eliminating the monuments that were erected at the time. You know, I mean, why do people go to Egypt? Why do people go to Rome? To look at not at the new buildings, they look at the old buildings. That is what is interesting. That's why they go there. I mean, Egypt earns nearly 1/3 of its income really by people who want to see the pyramids and the old buildings and so on. And luckily, those pharaohs, although some of them did also destroy the monuments of the previous one, but not all. No? So you can still see a lot of historic. I mean, now 7,000 years old or 6,000 years old monuments and things like that. And that's interesting. That is what life is all about, you know, that you don't destroy your own history or any other history. Why do it?
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Uncle Andreas, of Curt von Francois as a man? What is your impression of him? You said, as a matter of fact, in Namibian Sun today that he did good more than he did bad. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, firstly, he was, as far as I know, he was the founder of Windhoek. And by that, I don't mean that he was the first person who walked down Klein Windhoek or so. But he was the one who said, okay, this is the town which we make as capital of Namibia. Because at that time, the Chimbingwe was another option. And it was a choice between Windhoek and Chimbingwe, as far as I know. And he then decided, no, let's make the capital, because it's in the center of at the time, Southwest Africa. We make this the capital. And that was a wise decision, in hindsight, I think. Because also there's enough water, there's enough, it's good enough to expand itself as it has done. That's the one thing. I don't know about this other story, which I've only now heard, that he led a group of fighters to wherever, what is called?
Hornkranz.
Hornkranz or whatever. I never heard of that, no? So I can't really comment on it. But I think before he became the major or whatever of Windhoek, he also did some surveying work in Namibia. That's also just what I heard, you know. I mean, I've not it's not that I was a great fan of him. I mean, I thought at the time when they erected this statue, I said, okay, if it's the founder of Windhoek, why not erect a statue? But in hindsight, I think it was a beautiful figure, you know, a beautiful figure. And as I say, all I know is that he then was a surveyor and did a lot of useful surveying in Namibia. That's what I've been advised. No? And when he was major or whatever you call it at the time, well, he must have had important influence of how the city should be laid out. No? I mean, using the hills and the topography. I think he made very good choices in a way. Because in hindsight now we think it's a good town. It's a nice town. Klein Windhoek and Main Windhoek and so on.
What are your thoughts as a German-speaking Namibian? What are your thoughts of German colonial past in Namibia?
Well, as I say, I think if you take the colonial period, the colonial period was up to 1919, when the First World War caused Namibia to be handed over as a mandatory country to South Africa. What they did in the colonial period is phenomenal. I mean, the colonial period was from, you can say, 1870 or 75 till 1919. So it's 30 to 40 years only, nearly as long as the rule of Swaziland now. No?
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, they built dams and they, built roads and they built railways. And if you think of it, if you drive to Swakopmund and you look at the area and say, hell, if I have to drive here now with an ox wagon, 4 days, or if I have to build a railway line through this kind of a landscape here, where you have to sort of cart every drop of water from Swakopmund to be able to drink your tea. Doing something at the beginning, when it's still raw, everything, is much more complicated and takes much more enthusiasm than when half is already there, when you can just load your trucks and full of cement and then you drive it to the farm and then you can build your house and so on. Yeah. So in this sense, if you think, and the country was very big, it's still very big, but if it's very big and you still have to ride a horse, do a horse riding only, or with an oxen wagon, then it's every work you do is that much more. It takes much more effort and enthusiasm. And I think those colonialists who came here from Europe at the time, sort of 1900 and 1902, 3, 4, or whatever, they must have been really idealists in a way. Obviously, at the time, it wasn't so good in Europe either. No? I mean, around the change of the century, there were lots of people leaving Europe for America, for Australia, for New Zealand, and also for Africa. No? But I think they laid a good foundation in many ways. No? It's also not only the roads. No? It is also the systems which they brought over, and that means educational system. Police system, government system, telegraph system, road system, the whole road system. Then the system of developing how to deal with land ownership. No? In the traditional manner, you are awarded a land. No? But you only have the right to use it, to live it. And what the Germans put is this European style land ownership, that you actually can acquire a certain piece of land and that's yours, and there you can do what you like. No? So these systems were brought over to Namibia, and building also the harbor, starting a fishing industry. No? That wasn't here before, although in other African countries, they were fishermen, right from the start, kind of thing. I mean, in the north, you see they had these huge boats which they went into the sea and so on. So the fishing industry, and then also the mining industry. I mean, the number of mines they established, Sumep and about 4 or 5 mining ventures, the diamond mines and the copper mines and so on. That's what they also started, and the system of how do you go about if somebody finds something. The system that you first have to apply for a license to investigate the land, and then if you found something, then you get you can measure it up, and then you get your own separate rights, and all these things help to make the economy moving. No? And forward. I mean, in the German time, with the finding of the diamonds, no? And I mean, the history speaking, it's not the Germans themselves who found the diamonds, but one guy who was working in Kimberley, that's his history, he was helping this Mr. Strauch to build a railway line from Kitmanshoop to Littlespoort, and he said to him, these stones are the ones which they find in Kimberley. No?
Yeah.
But then the German guy, this Mr. Strauss, who eventually became a multimillionaire, no? he switched on quickly, took a few stones, brought them to the government, said, test this, is this really diamonds? And what they knew, which the one guy who saw the stones the first time didn't know, is that these stones, once they are polished and this, that, and the other, they are very, very valuable. And that brought the whole Lüdelspoort area. I mean, Lüdelspoort was at that time, it was the super town of Namibia. They were paying whiskies with little diamonds.
I know. Yeah. We'll go for a quick break and then we'll return with Andreas Vaatz.
Yeah, okay.
NMH at 1 brings you news from all across Namibia. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact nmh1@synergy.com.na. NMH at 1, your lunchtime news companion.
We continue our conversation with Andreas Vaatz. Now, Uncle, a lot of people who are viewing this show right now would be very outraged by what they would consider sheer insensitivity in your glorification of Germany. There was a termination order in which half of the Ovaherero and Nama communities died. Somehow you do not touch on that to say, you speak about all the development, the modernity, but what about those killings?
Those killings, well, let's put it this way, they didn't come out of the blue as far as my vision of the history is maybe different from yours or other people's.
Yep.
They didn't come out of the blue. What happened is, as far as I know, is the Germans who were here, what they also did, some businessmen, farmer businessmen, they purchased cattle from the Hero, and they put big herds together and carried them, brought them over to South Africa, to the mines. That's where these cattle were then sold and so on. And there was a development of shopping and so on, and many chiefs got a lot of credit. No? And then when the businessman always said, no, pay me, then you give me some more cattle if you haven't got the money, and that kind of. And there was a tension in that way developing between the inherent tribes here and the business community. That led to the original uprising, as it were, in 2000. I think it's 2004 or so. 1904. Yeah, and then they attacked a number of farms, killed a number of Germans, and that is how a virtually colonial war started. Not the only one in Africa. No? And what they did, maybe not so much during the war, but after the war. What one hears nowadays about imprisoning the Hereros and the Nama people and putting them in prison camps in Lüdelspoort, of all places. That was not done properly, not fairly done. Because once the war is over, it must be over. No? Then you cannot go and imprison the people afterwards again. That is, I feel that the people who were then in charge here, they were, this Mr. von Trotha, I think it's called, he was ruthless, and he did a lot of harm to the German reputation and destroyed the relationship which they had previously. But there are also other people, and I think von Francois was also actually a more friendly orientated person in the government, because he was a member of the government. I mean, he eventually even married, as far as I know, married a Nama person or so. So he was very friendly. And there are individual, that always happens in communities. There are some who have got no feeling for fairness and justice and respectability to the other person. And that has that is very bad. And that has done a lot of damage to the reputation. But overall, I think, I don't know how long you have been, are you a Namibian or?
Yes.
Overall, I think the relationship between the local community and the white community, if I can say, in Namibia, was always very good. If you compare to some places like South Africa, even, the relationship was not. I'm not talking about the German time. I'm talking a time when I was alive, from 1940 onwards. And I never seen any real tension, or I don't think it was ever. I mean, in South Africa at the last elections, they had even people dying and so on. That's how they hated each other. Also, the individual tribes were hostile to each other. And here, I think, from a human relationship point of view, we have a very good relationship, and we should keep it that way. We must respect each other. We must also expect each other's traditions and ways of thinking. And we must all help to build up Namibia to a better country. Although, I mean, what I have seen, it has become a very good colonial country. If you see what happens in Ethiopia or in Congo, or they seem to be continuously fighting. I don't know. In Nigeria, with not so much, not terrorists. These Arab types. There seems to be they also catch people, and then they demand money and that kind of a crime. And that hasn't luckily happened here. I think we have a good relationship. And we should keep it that, and that can only be kept if we have respect to each other, and that means we must recognize that other people have got sometimes other views and accept that.
In final, we have 1 minute left.
One moment, I want to tell you something. I am the first lawyer who employed black assistants. I employed Mr. Koroye, who later became a judge. Unfortunately, then he died in an accident. And to this day, whenever I go there and if somebody from the family comes, they come and greet me, and we've got a very good relationship.
Wonderful. Do you think that, there's even the issue of land, but we are left with 1 minute only. Do you think, for example, that there are these demands for land, ancestral land, that is land taken by white people who invaded Namibia at the time, drove the local communities off their land? When you hear those sentiments, what do you think usually?
Firstly, I must say that originally there was lots of land in Namibia where people were not staying in local people because there was no water. It was only water in the rain period. And the German community who came here, the farmers, they knew how to make boreholes or with pits, not even boring it, but just building it for water, and thereby made certain areas more arable, more useful. That's the one thing. I don't know, I've got no factual facts about what land or how much land was really taken over or sold to the whites or for cattle or whatever. But in the south, that was not a particularly good area for breeding cattle. There the German government said, okay, we can't breed cattle here, so can we do something different? And they introduced the sheep, not sheep, slaughtering sheep or wool sheep, but caracul sheep. With caracul sheep, if there's a drought, you can kill more small lambs, no? And make your herd small. If there's no drought, if there's good grass, you allow all small cattle to live, all small sheep. And that makes this area, southern area, where previously nobody was wanting to live, like in the desert, nobody now wants to live there, made that area very, economic. The richest farmers were the sheep farmers who were breeding caracul sheep, and that contributed to the development of Namibia. And I don't think in that area anybody took anybody's land away.
Yeah. And
I personally, as a lawyer, I think our government would be well advised to subdivide land in the so-called reserves or traditional lands. Make it into farms where everybody again gets ownership of a certain area. That's his. And not the story about here's a water hole and everybody sits around the water hole, and if the rain season is poor, everything around that is grazed off and the cattle start dying.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, no, wonderful. Yes, thank you, Uncle, for coming to the show. We will continue to have a conversation as things go on, but thank you for making time today.
Yeah, and thank you very much for allowing me to say something, because I think it's a good idea. There should have been a black person as well who says his story, to exchange thoughts like that. And we can learn each other and appreciate each other.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think the show, the majority of our guests, there's always diversity. Unfortunately, the show only makes for provision for one guest per day. So that's why I thought it's also good to tap from your community and hear what your thoughts are. That brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching and good night.